Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to tonight's very special event with author Brigid Kemmerer. We are so excited. So, Brigid is the New York Times bestselling author of many books, including Call It What You Want, More Than We Can Tell, Letters to the Lost, the Elemental series, and the Cursebreakers trilogy, which includes A Curse So Dark and Lonely, A Heart So Fierce and Broken, and her newest novel, A Vow So Bold and Deadly, which just released last week. And are we allowed to tell them the exciting news?
Sure.
Publicist just told me. um, it has just been found out that Vow So Bold and Deadly actually just hit the New York Times bestsellers
Yay!
list. Yay!
Thanks.
So that is very exciting. And of course, obviously, the Cursebreakers trilogy is why you're all here tonight. So, yes, but I'm so excited about that. All right. But she was born in Omaha, Nebraska, though her parents quickly moved her all over the United States, from the desert in Albuquerque, New Mexico, to the lakeside in Cleveland, Ohio, and several stops in between, eventually settling near Annapolis, Maryland. So, oh my gosh, Brigid, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited. I am so excited for your new news about the hitting the bestsellers. Yay!
Yay! Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so grateful that you invited me. This is amazing.
We are so excited to have you. Oh my goodness. So, let's start off and let's talk about the ins and outs of this amazing Cursebreakers series that wraps up so nicely. I'm assuming, because I haven't read the ending yet, and we're going to try to keep this spoiler free, guys, in A Vow So Bold and Deadly. So my first question really is, what was the initial spark that set you off on writing this series?
So I have always been a huge Beauty and the Beast fan. Like ever since I was a kid, I like to joke that, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and we watched, movie trailers as commercials on the Disney Channel, I remember, being a young girl, and I was so excited about Beauty and the Beast becoming a movie that Disney was putting out there, because I loved the story. In my bio, you just talked about how, when I was growing up, I really did move a lot. I was always the new kid. I was always this, bookish, chubby kid who was always a little bit of an awkward outsider at school. And there was something I really loved about the idea of falling in love with somebody for who they were inside, not necessarily what they looked like on the outside. And so I loved the story. I remember when I was a kid, we had a neighbor who had the old black and white, French version with subtitles. And I would beg to babysit for them just because I knew they had that movie. And I would put the kids to bed early just so I could watch it. So it was a no-brainer for me, when I had an agent who said, what do you want to work on next? And I was like, I would love to do a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Like, what do you think of if I took, Beauty and the Beast, but kind of crossed it with Groundhog Day, where he just kept turning into a beast over and over if he failed to break the curse? And that is kind of where the idea was born.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love that. That's exactly what it is. It's so amazing.
Thanks.
So my follow-up question really to that. So like as booksellers, we're always trying to find the best way to sell books that we love to our customers. So like for A Curse So Dark and Lonely, I kind of sell it as a very dark Beauty and the Beast retelling that's set in this like epic fantasy world that continues long past the curse being broken. So, but my question is, how would you sell your books in this series to excited readers?
I probably that way. Like I think sometimes when people hear Beauty and the Beast retelling, they think like Disney, or they think, very fairy tale light. And the story does get very heavy. There's nothing graphic. There's no, graphic sex. There's no graphic language or anything like that. But the story does get, heavy with some violence, and a lot of things are going on in this kingdom of Emberfall. And I'm going to cheat a little bit. I read a review once where somebody said that it's not really a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's more like a cross between Beauty and the Beast and Game of Thrones. Which I loved when I read that, because it is a little bit more like that. Like there's some really gritty, dark violence to it.
There really is. And yes, that is so true. It's kind of like you kind of get the setup with the whole Game of Thrones angle at the very end of A Curse So Dark and Lonely. And then it just like takes off in the next one. Like, oh my gosh, now it's just insane. Oh my goodness. So I am so excited though to learn that you were such a nerdy Beauty and the Beast fan, because so am I. Super excited. So basically, I am like a huge Beauty and the Beast fan. I am basically what this means is if anything says, oh, it has the words reimagining, retelling of Beauty and the Beast anywhere in its material. Okay, yeah, well, I have to read that. That's like, it's not even an option. Of course I'm going to read that. So I've read a lot of Beauty and the Beast retellings, but I particularly enjoyed your A Curse So Dark and Lonely, because it was like one that really, to me, it really seemed to be based on like the original, the dark, the fairy tale, the French fairy tale that was actually like a fantasy novel for adults, which a lot of people don't know. And that one, and in the original, the very original, the fantasy novel, it's where like the enchantress, she's not so much trying to teach a pompous, selfish prince to be kind. She's actually getting back at him because he rejected her. Hell, that whole, pardon my language, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned kind of thing. So my question, so with that is like, did you like look into like the different versions of Beauty and the Beast? How did you integrate like familiar tropes that people would like recognize from, say, the slightly Disney version, but into this more like entirely new story?
So when I first started writing it, I knew there were definite things that I wanted to keep. I wanted him to be a beast, even though Prince Ren begins the story as, a human man, and he transitions to a beast, later in the season. I knew I wanted to keep that, but then there were some things I didn't want to keep. Like I've always felt like a lot of the Beauty and the Beast renditions, kind of cling to that Stockholm syndrome. Well, I'm here, I might as well fall in love with him. So I needed to make sure that Harper, that she would escape, that Ren would, allow her freedom, and that she would make the choice to come back to the castle. Not necessarily for love, but because she felt like she could do better there. So that was also important to me. With Lilith, my enchantress, I was never a big fan of the Beauty and the Beast rendition where, the enchantress is this, gnarled old woman who comes knocking on the door of his palace and basically puts him and all of these other people under this huge curse because he doesn't let her in. I mean, I get it. And trust me, as somebody who tries every day to foster kindness in my sons, I get it. But at the same time, sometimes I'm like, it feels like an overreaction. You are a stranger and it's a palace. Like, I don't know. So I knew that I wanted Lilith to have a little bit stronger motivation than just that he was rude one day. Yeah.
Yes, and I will say she definitely has the motivation, because basically what we learn about her is that she is like this sorceress that Ren's father actually, he like basically tried to wipe out all of her people, or supposedly did wipe them all out, and so she wants to get back at him by basically seducing his son Ren so that he will marry her, and then she can take over his kingdom. And then when they do, Ren is kind of arrogant, and he obviously thinks he's the center of the universe, and that's fine. He's a prince, I guess. I get it. It makes sense. And, he does, they do say he does sleep with her, and then he basically kicks her to the curb in the morning. In my opinion, though, lady, you're not exactly innocent. You came here to seduce him and then trick him into marrying you so you could take over his kingdom. I kind of feel like maybe we just call it even. but no, she just decides, and I really enjoyed Lilith as a villain, as a character. She reminds me just like, I have this huge fascination with Lady Macbeth from Shakespeare's play. Now, obviously, she's not exactly Lady Macbeth, because Lady Macbeth gets Macbeth to do stuff, but it's that it's like that insidious mind of just like, I don't know, I picture her as just this like very, very like attractive woman, but it's just like the evil behind the smile, and it's just so wonderful. So that was such a great villain. Just like,
thank you. Thanks.
Just like, Oh my goodness. So I guess so we do have a comment on our audience, Daniel Dower. So well, now I think we did answer this question because you're asking if there's a Grimm's fairy tale version of Beauty and the Beast. Well, it's not Grimm; it's actually a French fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
Grimm. So it doesn't actually. I don't think it actually Grimm. It doesn't actually exist in the Grimm's fairy tales. It's a completely. It's
totally separate. Yeah.
Yeah, totally separate. And is the original more mature than Disney would have me believe?
I mean, I think so. Yeah, you know, especially the very old renditions I've seen, they're very romantic, but definitely seem a little bit more mature. And then I had a teacher tell me once, and this kind of like hurt my heart. And they said that the true like true origin of the story behind the fairy tale was that, the Beauty and the Beast was kind of a way to reassure girls in arranged marriages that they would be okay on their wedding night. That he may seem like a beast, but he's really okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Right. I heard that. I was like, no.
Wow. Can we
Let's go back to Disney?
I mean, I personally enjoy I do enjoy the fantasy novel of Beauty and the Beast, the original French one. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I still like the story about, falling in love with someone who's, inside, and let's just keep the nasty arranging. Bad teacher, don't tell us that. That's one too far there. Oh my goodness. But so I do love that, and I do agree with you about when I got older, after the child phase of watching Beauty and the Beast, where you see it but you don't really see all the certain references to it. Basically, you see a lot of fun singing people and everybody's happy in the end. So but after that, I did kind of wonder, I'm like, so wait, because they even say in the Beauty and the Beast movie, the flower blooms until his 21st year, and he's been like this for 10 years. So you're telling me that she cursed an 11-year-old because he was with her one day?
Thank you.
Really?
Thank you.
Yes. I'm like, that just seems like a bit of an overreaction.
Yes.
I'm like, it's like, what? I mean, doesn't that seem a little harsh? I mean, he's 11 and you're punishing him for being a brat. Isn't that what 11-year-olds do?
Plus, but then if he's 11, like there's the painting of him in the West Wing or in the East Wing, where he's like clawed through it and she puts the eyes back together. That's not an 11-year-old.
I know, it really isn't. So I get a little confused, but I did, as we were saying, we were talking before when they made the live action one, they kind of fixed that where they have him he's already an adult when she curses him, and then she just sort of freezes that one part of the country time. So everybody just stays kind in a similar way to A Curse So Dark and Lonely, except it doesn't repeat. It's just always that. So all right. We've geeked out about Beauty and the Beast a little bit. So, but back to your Curse So Dark and Lonely and the series. So another thing that I really liked that set it apart was, like you were discussing Harper. And she is a very different Belle character. She's like this, she's fierce, she's strong, she tries to get away. She knows about the curse pretty much from the beginning, which is a whole new thing. And she also has cerebral palsy. So with that, what made you decide to write a character with this type of medical condition? And then what kind of research did you have to do to make Harper's experience with cerebral palsy believable?
So anytime an author wants to write a character that knows a lot about something or is living an experience outside of theirs, the amount of research is incredible. You almost have to do this much research. My hands won't fit, do this much research for this much story. I absolutely love research. It's one of my favorite parts. I do a lot of research for any of my characters. For Harper specifically, I knew that Ren was going to be cursed by magic. And Ren was going to be very, woe is me, my world is ending, this is just so traumatic. And it is traumatic. He's really been enduring it for a long time. But I knew Harper was going to get there and be like, okay, dude, you live in a castle with an endlessly replenishing supply of food. And you have this guy, Commander Gray, who's trapped here with you, who obeys your every whim. Like, oh, boo-hoo, you're cursed. So I kind of wanted to juxtapose that a little bit. Harper's from our world. She's from Washington, D.C. She has cerebral palsy. I wanted her to have something that she would be like, oh, this is really not a big deal. That Ren would be like, you're clearly injured. Like, how do you cope with this? And when I was trying to kind of formulate Harper's character, I went through a lot of different things that I was trying to figure out. And I have a friend who I grew up with named Erin. And Erin has CP. And she and I grew up together. We grew up riding horses. And she's read all of my books. And every time she would read a book, she'd be like, when are you going to put me in a book? And when I got around to this one and I was thinking this idea, I texted her and I was like, I actually have an idea. Like, what do you think? And obviously Harper is nothing like Erin, but she really did help me springboard my research. I have a lot of really silly texts where I'd be like, okay, if somebody was in danger, could you leap off a galloping horse, or would that be too difficult? And she was like, no, I totally could. So that's kind of where Harper came from. And then it did, from there, once I got as much information as I could from Erin, then I did speak to some other individuals with CP, especially a teenager. I spoke to doctors because I wanted to get or pediatricians because I wanted to get the medical side of things correct. And then even once the book was done being written, I hired sensitivity readers. And that's somebody who is hired to read through a book and make sure that you're like that. So a lot goes into a character like that.
Yeah, I would certainly say so. Because I was like, oh, because I didn't really know that much about cerebral palsy either. Like, I had to actually look it up online when I was first reading A Curse So Dark and Lonely, because I'm like, okay, I do kind of get what this is going on, but what does this mean exactly for her? And yes, so it was very interesting and very well done. And then really the other thing that I think kind of adds to Harper, aside from that, is that she has this whole thing going on back home with her family. Like, her mom has cancer and is dying. Her brother, and then her dad has left them kind of in debt to these really scary guys. And, her brother is trying to, fix that. And he's being forced to do things that are things that he doesn't want to do. And then there's the whole threat to the life and everything. I mean, that was very intense. And that's a very intense thing for her to kind of come from. And then with Ren, obviously so she kind of has her trauma, but Ren has his trauma too. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, it's just great. It really is. It really is. I know that wasn't really a question, but it was really awesome.
Thanks.
Was that hard for you to write, though? That whole situation with Harper?
It was funny writing it, because there were days where I'd be like, wow, Harper has a lot going on, like a lot. But at the same time, for her to be able to kind of match with Ren, who also has a lot going on, I needed them to kind of be on the same level. Like, I needed her life to be as torturous as his was. She didn't see his life as being that torturous, in the beginning, but I needed them to kind of ultimately meet on a level playing field, which is why she needed to have so much happening.
Yeah, which was great. It was so great. I get excited. All right. So now, moving on, obviously after A Curse So Dark and Lonely, the story opens up past the Beauty and the Beast retelling into this new story with what happens after the curse is broken, the consequences of the curse, and the stuff that led up to the curse, during the curse, and what that means for all the characters now. So then we have In a Heart So Fierce and Broken, which I was so excited about because I love Gray. We see I sort of like a new fairy tale of sorts forming with Gray in the central figure. So why did you decide to take the story in that direction? Like, where did the idea of Gray because Gray, obviously he's prominent in the first one. He's a very important character, but then it kind of is like, he's like the central figure more so in The Heart So Fierce and Broken. So where did that kind of idea come from? Was that I say intentional, of course it was intentional, but why did you decide to go in that direction?
So when I very, very first started writing A Curse So Dark and Lonely, I did not plan for Gray to be as big a character as he became. But after I put him on the page and the more I wrote him, the more I liked him. And then the more the story kind of began to change in its structure, until Gray kind of, I'm trying to keep it spoiler free, until Gray kind of ended up who he was and where he was at the end of A Curse So Dark and Lonely. And when I started writing A Heart So Fierce and Broken, I was writing it from all 4 points of view. So I had, Harper and Wren, who were the stars of Curse. And then I also had Gray, and I had Leah Mara, who is a new character that's introduced in Heart. And it just wasn't working. I remember I was probably 100 pages into it, and only like 2 days had passed, because I was trying to show everything from everybody's point of view. And I remember having a conversation with my editor, like, it's just not working. And she wrote back, like, in this very sweet yet obvious way, like, okay, so do you need all 4? Can we just go with Gray and Leah Mara? I was like, yes. And I wasn't sure. I said, I'm worried, like, are people going to be okay following Gray's story? And she was like, people are going to be fine following Gray's story. And I'm glad that people did. I feel like the way the story has turned out is, Curse is very much Wren and Harper, and it's their whole story. And Heart is very much Gray and Leah Mara and their whole story and figuring out who they are. But Vow is really about Wren and Gray figuring out their relation to each other. And I loved writing Vow. I wrote most of it during the pandemic, which was really challenging. But it kind of gave me an outlet for all of that emotion that everybody was feeling. And yeah, I love the way that it came together. And I'm so, so glad that people are loving it too. It means a lot to me.
Oh, yay. But yes, I was excited. I very much enjoyed Gray in Curse. I thought he was so cool. I was like, oh, this is like awesome. And then I was so excited that he was like the main person in Heart. So yes, I was totally fine to follow Gray and see where he goes. And that was so cool. And because he's kind of an enigma in Curse a little bit. Like, he's kind of like, you're not totally sure. He has this like stoic appearance, but then he's all friendly to children and animals. And you're like, dude, like, like what, like, who are you? So it was so nice to see like things more from him and like where he's at and him dealing with so much. Cause again, he's dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, and has to figure out, what am I doing? Oh my gosh. But so basically back to the whole Harper, Wren, and Gray, which you kind of touched on already, because they're very, I always felt that they're very strong, and they have very different voices, which is really hard to do and was really, really great, because you're showing at some point in all the books, you're showing it from each of their perspective, and they all sound very different from each other, which is really great. And like, so basically for one, and you're showing their viewpoint like in first person, so it has to sound like, a different person each time. So do you have any writing tips on how to do this, like, as well? Like, it's just like, how do you get inside the characters' heads? That's just like
So, and it's hard. Like, Vow was tough because it's all 4, but luckily by that point I had written, 2 whole books with these characters, so I kind of knew who they were. To me, they always sound really different in my head. And to write in a really close first-person present point of view, you really kind of need to mentally bury yourself in that character. I'm going to sound like a real weirdo, and when I sit down to write, like, I really need a dark room. Sometimes if I'm writing on the weekends, I will go in my bedroom and like close all the blinds and turn my lamp off. I did an event with an author once who had this cave chair, and it was like a big fluffy egg, and he would sit in it, and like, I told my husband, I was like, I need one of these cave chairs, and I can't find them anywhere, but it just looks so cool. I was like, that's what I need. I need like this pit. And it's almost like I need some kind of sensory deprivation tank, because I don't know, like, it's weird. And I can't do it now because of the pandemic. It also works if I go someplace really loud and chaotic, like a crowded Starbucks. I write really well, like in an airport. Things like that. It's almost like I either need to be completely overwhelmed with input or not. That's not really answering your question about POV. But for me, I need something to really steal everything else in my head so I can kind of immerse myself in the character. And as far as making the voices unique, they just feel unique in my head, and that pours onto the page. I will say with writing multiple points of view, I often get the question of like, well, how do you know whose point of view a scene should be written from? And which is a really valid question. And sometimes I will have to write a scene from both sides just to really figure it out. But a good rule of thumb is to write the scene from whoever's point of view has the most at stake in that scene. Like who has the most to lose. And sometimes that's not an easy answer. There's a scene in A Curse So Dark and Lonely where Harper meets Lilith in the arena. And without giving any spoilers, it's a very intense scene. And Harper and Ren and Gray and Lilith are all there. And the first time I wrote that scene, I wrote it from Ren's point of view. And I wasn't sure it was right. So I went back and I rewrote it from Harper's point of view. And I was like, oh, this is the one. And sometimes that's just the way to find the right answer.
That's so cool. And that's such great advice too. Like, it's like so many people, they don't realize like how many words are written by authors that don't ever actually get into the book. It's like you write, it's like, no, I wrote like 3 books to get to this one book. Like that. Like,
sometimes, like, yeah.
Oh my goodness. So kind of like, follow-up question, because I really like the relationship that you have between that's like Harper, Ren, and Gray, because it's like it's this weird, like at first it's like feels like a love triangle, but it's not really. But it's like this, it's not, and then it's like, but they have all 3 of them have a very close connection to each other, and like I kind of feel like it's like that relationship is the main kind of central driving force of the whole story throughout all the 3 books. So like, how did you write that relationship? Like, just kind of talk about that relationship in general. Like, how did you make it? I'm assuming you meant for that relationship to be the core central driving force of it. So like, can you just talk about that a little?
Sure. So, Ren and Gray have been trapped by this curse. So outside the castle, it's only been like 5 years, but Ren and Gray have been trapped in this curse for 327 seasons. So, I don't know, 100 years basically. And they are tired, they're tired, they're overwhelmed, they're exhausted. They just want to be done. Like Ren talks about, all the different ways he's tried to kill himself basically. And, how he's tried to burn the castle to the ground, how he asked Gray to behead him. And Gray's like, no. And so they're like really done. And then Harper shows up and she, and Ren has kind of secluded himself away from his people. And she drags him and Gray out into, away from the palace and is like, dude, your kingdom is falling apart. Like your people are starving, you've got invaders coming in from this other country. How are you going to, like, what are you going to do? You're the crown prince. Like, I get that you're cursed, but you got to do something. And I knew that would be kind of a striking moment for Ren and also for Gray too. And I knew that she would have a unique relationship with the 2 of them. And a lot of people suspected that there might be a love triangle with Gray. And I really love Harper's relationship with Gray because there's not really a love triangle. And I think we all have moments where we do have a spark with somebody that we ultimately don't end up with, but we might have some kind of spark with them or even an attraction for that person, but they just end up being a good friend for whatever reason, whether it's just not fated to happen or the timing isn't right, or they aren't the person you're meant to be with romantically, that you still have that chemistry. And I think that what Gray and Harper have, and that carries through the entire 3 books, and they even talk about it in Vow.
Which is so great, because the one thing that made me think like, it's like that part feels like a love triangle, but then I'm like, no, it's not really a love triangle, at least not in the traditional idea of a love triangle. But there's this one scene in Curse where it's from Ren's point of view, and he's watching as Gray is showing Harper how to throw, like, I think it's like knives, daggers, and he's watching this, and from his point of view it sounds like he is getting jealous of Gray, which is where and he is, which is where the whole thing of like, oh, is this like, but then I'm thinking, see, from Ren's point of view, you see it that way. But really, when you can see it from, if you look at it from yourself, I'm like, dude, they're just hanging out. They're like relax. You've got to relax here.
She doesn't have his number in her phone. It's fine.
It's like when she, and then I'm like, well, dude, you've kind of been a little standoffish. Maybe she's just trying to get to know you a little better through this guy who you've been hanging out with. Right? It's like, dude, calm down. Because yeah, when I'm reading this, I'm like, he's getting like really jealous over this, and then of course it goes back to Harper's point of view, and I'm just like, oh, dude, calm yourself. Like, he is not making a move on her. He is just trying to be nice to her. And I do like that one, where like Ren is trying to understand why she seems to like Gray so much more than she likes him. And Gray basically kind of tells him in a polite, I'm like the royal servant to the prince kind of way. Like, well, dude, I just listened to her. It's like, dude, you moron. I didn't like demand she do things with me. I didn't like order her. Like that's why she likes me better. Go figure. Like, but I did really, that their relationship, all three of them, I like, oh, it's so good. And then
Thanks.
It's so good. It makes you want to keep reading. It really does. So on to like this. So you've actually written other, totally going off here. You've written like several other books besides the Cursebreaker series, which are like, they're varying genres. They're like contemporary YA. There's some supernatural romance going on. There's like thriller stuff there. So this trilogy, though, I feel is really your first book that there's like series that was set very much in the fantasy genre. I mean, it's obviously, it does, you know, Harper is from Washington, D.C. in our world, obviously, but it takes place mostly in Emberfall, which is a completely fantasy world. So like, why'd you choose to write a fantasy story like this? Was it like more difficult than your other books because you had to make up the whole world basically, or was it easier? Was it the same, but you know, was it just as hard but different? Like,
I mean, so every book is hard, you know, in its own way. And, you know, writers often joke that when they start writing a new book that they forgot how to write. And it's really that you're creating a new world every time, regardless of whether it's contemporary or, you know, paranormal or full on fantasy. With this one, I had actually started writing it back in 2012. I had written about 50 pages of it, of this idea. And my publisher at the time wasn't interested. They didn't do fantasy. They didn't think that they could do anything with it. So I just kind of put it on the shelf for several years. And I didn't pull it back out till the end of 2015. And I revised it and rewrote it and sent it back to my agent, and we were able to sell it to Bloomsbury. And I'm really, sometimes people are like, you know, oh, your first publisher missed the boat. And I'm like, no, they didn't. Because in 2012, I wasn't the writer that I was in 2016 when I was drafting Curse. And the story is completely different from how I would have told it in 2012. I'm a different writer. I'm a different person. I've had more kids, you know, and so I'm glad that the story kind of sat and waited for me to be able to tell it. I do, you know, all of my books are about really the people, you know, and fantasy does have the challenge of the world building, but it also, like, fantasy kind of gives you can do a little bit more that you really can't do in contemporary. Like, contemporary, you can't have a girl just hop on a horse and go, you know, running off through the woods at 2:00 in the morning. Like, you know, whereas in fantasy, it's like, sure, absolutely, you can totally do that. Yeah, so they all have their challenges, and I love them all.
oh, that's so great. So did you always want to write a fantasy? Because you said you started writing this a while ago before, and then you put it on the shelf. Did you always want to write a fantasy? Did you just want to write stories about characters? Because you are right, all your books really focus on the characters. The genre's kind of almost just not invalid or not important, but it's like it's the characters that matter. Did you want to write fantasy?
I mean, I did, I don't think there's any genre that I don't want to write. As long as I have the characters in the right place, I do think if somebody is going to be traditionally published, that you really do need to stick to one genre for a while. And that's just from a marketing standpoint. Like my first 6 books are paranormal romance. You want readers to pick up your book and get kind of a similar experience every time. And then, when reading my paranormal, I had so many readers, they were like, these are just like contemporary YA, but there's a little bit of magic. I was like, oh, yay, now I can write a contemporary YA. And I wrote 3 of those. And, when those did, somewhat well, it was easy to say, listen, guys, I know, contemporary readers sometimes don't like fantasy, but it's a girl from our world. And, really, there's just a lot of people drama. Yeah, I don't know. I love all of it.
That is so cool. And you kind of answered my other question, because like a lot of authors, they do get pigeonholed into writing kind of the same genre from a marketing perspective. And like you kind of explained how you were able to avoid that. And like so you kind of already explained that. So you kind of got to me there, Bridget. So do you, so another question though, adding on to that, do you find it difficult to write in various genres, in like the different genres, because like, or is it not as hard because you don't necessarily write in a different genre at the same time?
I wrote Call It What You Want, which was my 3rd contemporary YA, in between Curse and Heart. And I don't think of it as a challenge, really, to switch back and forth. They just, I don't know, kind of like the characters just feel different in my head, like once I'm in that book world mentally.
Cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Now this might be a difficult question, but what I was kind of wondering, what do you feel was your most challenging book to write to date?
Oh, wow. God, so many different reasons. Like A Vow So Bold and Deadly was really challenging just because I was writing it during the pandemic. I wasn't very far into it, and then the entire world shut down, and I have 3 little boys. And suddenly I went from having a really nice routine of my kids going to school and me being able to write during the day and handle all of that stuff, to suddenly everyone was home and I was mom and teacher and writer and, and all of that at the same time. The entire country is just in this collective state of panic. We are very lucky that we were not affected, by anybody in our, immediate family, dying from COVID or having to have hospitalization, but it's for everybody, it's been an incredibly traumatic year. So it was challenging for that reason. But then, I don't know, every book has its weird challenges. Like A Heart So Fierce and Broken, it took me like 6 times to figure out the right Leah Mara character. Like I kept going through different girls. I was like, no, this isn't right. Scrap it. Write again. Oh no, this isn't the right one either. Scrap it. Try again. I don't know.
But that is actually a really good answer. So basically, it's, they all have their own challenges at times. And I would think it'd be really hard to pick one that's the most challenging, because I'm sure whenever you're writing one, it feels challenging.
Yes.
When you're writing it, like, oh my God, how am I going to finish this? Why are you not working, character? Why do I have to write 6 different versions of you before you're the right one? Oh my gosh. So, we have another question from the audience. So awesome. They're wondering what genre was the most fun to write in?
Oh, wow. So I will always love contemporary YA. Contemporary YA has a big part of my heart. I grew up on I know Christopher Pike wrote a lot of paranormal stuff, but I loved his just contemporary thrillers. I loved Lois Duncan. I just love contemporary. But fantasy is just fun. There's just a lot of things that you can explore that are kind of harder to explore in the real world. So if I want to be emotionally gutted, I'll go for contemporary. But if I really want to just kind of explore and have some fun moments, it'll be fantasy.
Oh, that is cool, because I did like your comment about, like, in contemporary, you can't really have a girl in 2 a.m. get on a horse and run through the woods. And I'm thinking, well, that was like the most normal thing that happened in A Curse So Dark and Lonely. And it made perfect sense. Like, it's like, so yes. Oh my goodness. So yes, that is true. All right, and then actually, I have another question that I'm not. This is just it's actually one that I have been wondering myself for a while. And so several of my coworkers, they find it hard to read YA anything, since the majority of YA is written in first person, usually in present tense. So why do you think this point of view is so commonly used in YA?
So I can't speak to why it's commonly used. I think sometimes first person present tense feels like it's more easily accessible, because you can just write straight out of the character's head. But I also think first person present tense is really, really challenging to get right, because it's really easy, and I find myself doing this too, and I have to fix it in revisions. It's really easy to fall into the trap of writing almost as if you're just writing into a diary. And then today I went to the grocery store, and when I went through the doors, I saw my old friend. It's really easy to fall into that trap of just narrating a list of events as opposed to making the world come alive. And for anybody who's a writer, you really have to, that's what I mean when I say you really have to get super deep into that character. Instead of saying, I walked out of the house and heard birds chirping, you more have to have an awareness. Like, when I stepped onto the front porch, birds were chirping. It's just a different angle of telling the story.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. So do you have any, this is kind of a follow-up, because I am wondering, because I'm always trying to get my coworkers, and they know who they are because I know they're watching, trying to get them to read like because I have never had a problem with first person and or present tense, but they tell me it's hard for them because it takes them out of the story sometimes. But I think that can also be because the author just didn't really get it right. Like you're saying, it sounds like almost somebody just writing a diary, like, I did this today and blah, blah, blah. Do you have any like good, I'm just wondering if you have any like good examples of YA aside from your own? Because I love yours and I would get them to read them in a heartbeat. But do you have like examples of like other YA books that make you do it really well?
The first one that pops into my head, and I can't swear that it's first person present, but it is first person. I'm almost sure it is Openly Straight by Bill Koenigsberg.
Ooh.
I love all of his books, and it's Openly Straight is one of my, that's a contemporary YA, and it is about a gay boy from Colorado who was always, he jokes about him being like the gay mascot of his high school, super supportive parents, and he was, open, very openly gay. But when he transfers to this private boarding school in New England, he decides that he is going to basically go back into the closet because he's sick of being like the gay poster boy. And it's really cleverly written. I love Bill's writing voice. I blurbed another one of his books called The Bridge that just came out last fall. And it's incredible. I highly recommend his books.
Oh, that is so cool. Oh, yay. So, right. So I really like that answer. And it's just, because I wanted to get a perspective from an author of like, why like first person is it is used a lot in YA, and less, not that it's not used in other genres, but it's less so. So yes, that is really cool. And looks like, do we have yes, we have another question. So this one is from Spectrum Reading, which I do know is actually, and I hope she's but is actually another YA for All book club member.
Awesome.
So, and so she is asking, are there any other Beauty and the Beast retellings that you are a fan of?
Let's see. There's a Megan Spooner one. I think it's called Hunted. The old Robin McKinley one, which is called, I can't remember the Robin McKinley one. There's one that, if you want more real world, there's Beastly by Alex Flynn. And that is set like in our real world about, basically it's this boy in high school who is turned into a beast and kind of has to seclude himself in a townhouse. Like, his parents hire a blind tutor. It's very clever. It was made into a movie. The movie was terrible, but the book was really, really good. And then Alex Flynn has like a whole series of kind of twisted fairy tales like that. If you want something that's like Beauty and the Beast meets Bridgerton, The Beast of Beswick by Amelie Howard is amazing. I absolutely love it. And that came out, I want to say that came out about a year ago. It's got a great cover.
Oh, that actually sounds very familiar to me, that one. Let me see. We're not having her on with that one, but we are actually, you mentioned Amelie Howard. Amelie Howard is actually doing a panel event with us next week. So,
that's awesome.
For
like I forget
the rake hell of Roth.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Oh, that's so cool.
So if that sounded cool to you, because it honestly sounded really cool to me, you might tune in next week when she's going to be on with Lynn Rush and Kelly Ann Blount. So, yay! So, like, I'm like, oh yay, we get to talk about like our other events. Hooray! but yeah, that actually sounds really cool, because I didn't really know what her books were about, but that I love that idea of like Beauty and the Beast meets Bridgerton. Yeah, I could get into that. So awesome with that. Yes. So back to your lovely books, however. So A Vow So Bold and Deadly, it's the last book. This is like a trilogy, right? And we're saying, okay. So, but I was just wondering, did you plan to write it as a trilogy from the start? And then how do you plan out a story that's like connected over several books? Because like stuff that happens in the first book, comes back up again in the last book and in the middle, and it's like they have to all be how do you plan for that and do all that?
I didn't.
You didn't.
I wrote the first book, and then I knew where the second book was going to go. Once I was ending the first one, I knew where the second one was going to go. And I remember my editor said, okay, can you kind of give me an arc of where you see the next two books going? And I was able to give her kind of a long summary of the second book and a shorter summary of the third book. But sometimes for me, some of the fun in writing is letting things kind of develop organically as I'm writing. And being able to kind of pull things back together in the third book that match the first book and the second book is just a lot of fun of discovering that in the moment.
That's really cool. Oh my gosh. And then, so kind of a follow-up to that. So you have written a series before. There were more books in it, the Elementals
yes.
series. But you also wrote standalones that are just like, so do you think one is easier or harder? Are they the same? Are they difficult but the same difficulty but different, like in different ways? Like,
I love series because I love having the opportunity to go back and visit my characters some more. I do try to make sure when I'm writing a series, and all of my series, so Elemental, I have two contemporary novels they're technically standalones, but they're companion novels. So they kind of, one does follow the other. And that's just with two of those. And then even with the Cursebreaker series, all of my books, I want to have a wholly contained story in the book that you're reading so that you can finish. And you might have like a teaser chapter of what's going to happen in the next book, but the story in that book is complete. And sometimes people, they get mad, not really mad, but they get mad that, Curse and Heart end on a cliffhanger. And I'm like, it's not really a cliffhanger. It's more like if you watch a TV episode and then they give you the little, well, this is old school, they don't do this anymore, but then they give you the little 10-second next week on MacGyver. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Oh, so that is so you said you like writing series more than standalones, or
I like being able to come back to the same characters and give them more to do.
that's really cool. And I do like your thing about you try even in your series, like it's a contained story. So it's a standalone-ish book in a series. It's like there's like, yeah, because there is that little like teaser trailer at the end, but like the main storyline of that one is done. And then it's going to connect to the main storyline of the next one. But so that, yes, that is so cool. Oh, so now the next question I have is actually one that I'm stealing from a previous author interview that I did, from one of our audience members asked this question, but it was so good. So I'm going to ask you now. So who would you say is your closest authorial doppelganger?
Oh, wow. So that's really tough. Because I write in so many different genres. Like I write a lot, my paranormal YA is a lot, very similar to like Jennifer L. Armentrout. My contemporaries are similar to like Miranda Keneally or I forget her name, the woman who wrote My Life Next Door, Huntley Fitzpatrick. Those kind of, just sweet but also heavy hitting contemporaries. With fantasy, I don't know that I have like a doppelganger. I feel like my books kind of appeal to readers of like Stephanie Garber, Sabaa Tahir, people who have really character driven fantasy.
Which is very true, and it's very fantasy driven. And honestly, all of your books are very not fantasy driven. Hello, character driven. All of your books are really very character driven. So it's kind of like if you basically with any of your books, if you really like character driven stories, you're probably going to love your books, whether or not they're, which is also really nice. I will say as a bookseller that you write in so many different genres, because it's always like, everyone always thinks they want to read, they like this one genre and they think, okay, but then they only want to read in that genre. And I always like to try to open the door a little to like, be like, well, you might like this one. And I can be like, okay, so Brigid Kemmerer wrote the Koenigsberg trilogy. You love that one. Well, she also wrote these other books. They're not fantasy, but they're her writing and they're her character-driven stories. And that is like, that's just great. So thank you for that. Because it is really cool. Oh my gosh. So we're getting towards the end here. There are still a couple questions left that I have for Brigid, but just to anyone out in the audience, if there is a question you want to ask, please type it into the comments so I can ask Brigid before we're done here. But so my other question now, so, oh my gosh, sorry. There are some other comments that I'm just getting in now. So, Spectrum Reading actually said she has read Beastly. So
awesome.
She was very excited about that. So anyway, so I did, before the interview, I was looking on your website. I did see something that looks like it's a new book you're writing, but is there anything new you're working on that you'd like to share with us, that you're able to share with us?
So what I'm writing right now is a secret project, so I can't really talk about it, but I can talk about my next release, which is Defy the Night,
yes,
which comes out in September. I am super, super excited about it. We don't have a cover release available yet, but that's coming really soon. I cannot wait. But it is a second world fantasy. There's no crossover with our world. It's unrelated to the Cursebreaker series. And it is about this kingdom called Kandala, which is kind of overrun by this sickness that causes a fever. It is not a pandemic book, I swear. But it's about this kingdom that is overrun by this fever. And the only cure for the fever is this special elixir made with petals from this elusive moonflower. And Kandala, because so many people are getting sick, is kind of being run by this cruel king and his brother, who is the palace executioner. And his brother is kind of not a nice person and has a bad reputation. But the brothers are in this really bad situation where they're just trying to make sure that people aren't smuggling this medicine. And there's a girl named Tessa who has taken it upon herself to steal medicine and distribute it among people who can't afford it so that she can try to help lives. But in the process of doing this, she begins to discover that everything she thinks she knows about the illness and about her kingdom is incorrect. And the only way to really save people is for her to start a revolution and break things from the inside out. And I can't wait for people to read it. It's so much fun. It's my favorite thing I've written yet.
Oh, I know it. I was looking on your website just to because, and I saw it. I was like, oh, yay! I was like, yay, defy the night. Oh, yay. Oh, it really did look so cool. And it sounds so amazing. I am so excited now.
Yay, thank you.
Yay. We have another question from Daniel Dower. So, if you could pick any author, living or dead, to write a rave review blurb on your book's dust jacket, who would it be?
Okay, so it would have been Jodi Picoult, and that happened. So she blurbed First So Dark and Lonely, and then we ultimately became friends, which is so surreal. So now, I mean, he's not really an author, but the one person that I would just die if he read one of my books would probably be Lin-Manuel Miranda.
I was like, oh yes, that is. I was like, yes, no, he should totally read one of your books and blurb it, and be just he should just come into the bookstore. Really, he should just appear. That would be fantastic if he just did that. Oh my gosh, but. Yay. Oh my God. I don't see any reason why we couldn't include a blurb from Lin-Manuel Miranda on a book. I see no reason for that.
I would just have to insist.
I mean, I don't think that there would be a bad thing that would happen from that. It's like, come on, guys. Who cares? It's like he writes plays. He writes stuff. It can count. I mean, I feel like that is absolutely. I was like, oh, that is so great. Yay. Oh my goodness. So we have another question from the audience. Katie, who is actually another YA book club member, and she was super, super excited that you were coming. So here is her question. So do you have any advice for finding motivation to write on days when you feel too busy or just don't feel like writing? And do you have any advice for making characters come alive in writing? Okay,
so the thing about do I have days when I don't feel like writing? That is every day. No, that's not true. It's so funny because I can be super passionate and excited about a story, but sometimes just the idea of sitting down and trying to get into that character's head is really challenging. So I get it, especially right now when everything is demanding our attention. So usually what I will do is I will tell myself that I only have to write 250 words. If I am really struggling and I really don't want to be doing it, I will say, you know what, let's write 250 words and see how it goes. 250 words is generally a page, like a Microsoft Word page. And usually that is enough to kind of get me going. It's not a threatening number. It's enough. I try to write 6,000 or 7,000 words a week, which really breaks down to a little over 1,000 words a day. If I give myself a day off. So that 250 is enough to kind of springboard me into what I need to get done. And it's also, if I just can't write after that, it's also okay, because I'm a quarter of the way there. I can make it up the rest of the days of the week. The second part of that question about making characters come alive. So I get this question a lot, and I think the best thing you can do for your characters is give them motivations and hopes and dreams and worries and fears that have nothing to do with the plot, even your side characters. If your characters are if everything they say and everything they do and everything they think about is only focused on that climactic point of the book, is only focused on your plot, then they are going to feel one-dimensional because everything that's happening is just going to be really narrowly focused. But if you give your characters other things to think about, like, Harper is worrying about her mom. She's worrying about her brother. She's also worrying about the people at Emberfall. She's also worrying about, is Ren going to try and make a move? And why is he being creepy and weird about this curse? Give your characters like lots of different things to think about and worry about and things to feel motivations from, even secondary characters. And that will really help make them three-dimensional.
Nice. That is fantastic. All right. So, guys, we just to everyone listening, we are coming up on the last question that I have. So if anybody else has any questions they want to ask, please write them in the comment section, and we'll get them asked to Brigid before we're done here. So my last question is, I always ask this at the end because I want to know, what is one of the most recent books you've read and enjoyed? And recent can be, subjective.
So I loved The Book of Two Ways by Jodi Picoult. Let's see, that is not a YA fantasy though. Right now, let's see. Hold on. I should have had an answer ready. Let me look at my Kindle because I just recently read one. And I always forget the title. Oh, The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle Jensen.
Ooh.
That is fantasy. It's not YA fantasy, but it's not super racy either.
Nice. What did you like? Was it
What's
just,
that?
What did you like about it, the book?
So I really liked that the main character, and I forget her first name, I'm sorry, I'm so bad at character names. The main character is she has been trained to kind of be this secret assassin in this Bridge Kingdom. And when she gets there, she starts kind of falling for the people and falling for the guy. And, she kind of, again, maybe a little bit of Stockholm syndrome, but maybe not. And it was really creatively written.
Oh, that is so great. That is so great. Oh my gosh. So let me just make sure I'm not missing any questions from anyone, because that would be bad. Stop that. My computer. So, all right, it looks like that is it for so yeah, doesn't look like any more are coming in. Oh wait, something is happening. It looks like we do have all right. Nope. I was wrong. Sorry. My computer's being weird, guys. I'm very sorry about that. So it looks like we're all done. And so I wanted to thank everyone for coming. Before I completely go away, I did just want to show off Brigid's Cursebreaker series. As you can see, it's right here. Now, I'm sure everyone watching right now already has these books, but tell your friends, tell everyone. And we did get permission to show this after Brigid's tour is done. So anybody who's watching this after the fact, I just wanted to let you know, Curse So Dark and Lonely, we have at the store in paperback. We also have Heart So Fierce and Broken, which just recently came out in paperback, is the second one. And we are when we do have, obviously, the latest one, the final book in the Curse Breakers trilogy, because so now everyone, the trilogy is over, so you don't have to wait for the books. They're already here. So this is out in hardcover, and it's just, so the whole series is available at Town Book Center. So, and if you want to get all three at the same time, that's perfectly fine. And then in either way, you don't have to wait to know, because it's already there. So please come in and see us, get the books, and you can see Brigid's other books as well, which we do have.
Yay!
So yes, so thank you so much, Brigid. This has been so much fun. And just thank you all for coming. Really, it has been such a great time chatting with you, Brigid.
Thank you. It was so great talking to you too, and thank you to everybody who was able to tune in and hang out.
Yay! All right. Well, everyone, thank you again for coming, and bye.
Bye. Thank you.